Okay, today we'll start on the bottom of Chaf on the Aleph, 20a. The words are V'chol Ma'aseh Beis Din Reizeh Yach. So we had those words a bunch of times. Okay. Thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. In the schus of our learning, we should have the Beis Hamikdash immediately. And the learning, Lili Nishmas, Zahava, Golda, Bas Baruch Binyamin, and whoever needs to refuah Shlema. So in the Mishnah, we had all of these types of documents, which we said that you can return, documents of chalitza and documents of appraisals and those things. Another thing is kol ma'aseh beis din. Any act of beis din could be returned. So quote this story. We had this story before. There was a get that was found in the court of Rav Huna. It said that there was Yosef ben Shimon that divorced his wife in Shviri Masa, the city Shviri, which is on the river Rachis. Rav Huna says, well, this get was found. So it wasn't that like the messenger brought it. The get was lost and they found it there. So he said that, how do we know, even though in this town we only have one Yosef ben Shimon, but it could be that there's another town called Shviri, which is on the Rachis River as well. And there's another fellow over there that's also Yosef ben Shimon, and his wife is Rachel Bas, whatever. Okay, so Amalei Rav Chisda l'Rabba, Rav Chisda says to Rabba, put ayin. You should look into this. The Lo'urta boy le Rav Chisda minach, because tonight, Orta means the night. Rav Chisda is going to ask you. Rav Huna is going to ask you what your opinion is. Nafik dak bashkach titnan. So he went out, he searched, he found, it says, Kol ma'aseh beis din reizeh yachzer, which basically means that anything that's act of court, it means that's been verified, that's been notarized, that you could return, and you're not concerned that maybe there's another city that has the same name, that has the same people, the same names of people in it. I have no concern about that. Amalei Rav Amram l'Rabba. Rav Amram says to Rabba, that Kol Ma'aseh Beis Din is talking about a promissory note that's been notarized, that's been validated. How do you know that can answer a question about a get? We're going to make a woman free to marry anyone based on a halacha that you have regarding money. Amalei, he says to him, Tarda. She's like, you fool. I thought it was calling him a vegetable. But that's Rashi doesn't say that. It just says, it means like, you fool. Shtari chalitza miyunin tanan. What he's telling him is that, I know I quoted the part of the Mishnah that says Kol Ma'aseh Beis Din, but what I meant was to reference the Mishnah, which says that Shtari chalitza, you return, Shtari miyunin, you return. Which is referring to ritual laws, which is marriage laws, as opposed to just money laws. Paka arza de beirav. Well, the beam that was holding up the yeshiva, like, got dislodged. Became a dangerous to split. So. Yeah, the inspections did not go well then. So Maram Mishum Dipaka, or Ramram said it's because of the insult that he said to me, and Maram Rabba said Mishum Dipaka, because he was trying to embarrass me with his question. It's because of me that it split. Okay. Matzah bechafisa bidluskama. It's interesting because we had the same story before, but we didn't have that ending to it. If it was found in what's a chafisa, a satchel? What are they just say chafisa?
So is the reasoning different because there's no money involved in the chalitza or the miyun?
That was Rav Amram's question, but Rabbi told him that's not true because the Mishnah says that the same thing applies to shtari chalitza and shtari miyun.
Mm.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the Gemara is going to ask. Yeah. So, my chafisa, the Gemara asks, what is chafisa? I'm a Rabba Barbar Chana. Rabba, the grandson of Chana, says, chemes ktana. It's a small flask that's usually used to hold wine. My dluskama, so if we're talking about if you found documents inside this flask, so even though the documents themselves, we know the two names that are in it, but we don't know who to give it to. But because the flask theoretically could have a siman on it, yeah, it's this type of flask. So that's going to tell me who to give the document to, right? If you find documents in a briefcase, so even the documents themselves, if you would find them, you wouldn't know if to give it to the lender or to the borrower, which that's going to make a huge difference. But because they're in a briefcase, and the briefcase has a name on it, so then you know who it goes to. Yeah. Naftali asked yesterday about the concern that maybe someone else had the same item when it comes to simanim. And maybe someone else has the same item, maybe he sold it to someone else or lent it to someone else, and he knows the siman. The Tosfos over here mentions in this Matzah b'chafisa b'luskma, he says, and if you work your way down towards the bottom of it, not concerned that maybe this satchel was borrowed by someone, and it's someone, and it's his documents that are in it. Just like it's sort of like an institution that we use simanim, even though theoretically someone could have borrowed it and known the siman and all of that, but nevertheless, that's how the sages instituted. Okay. I mean, the question is there, but just to set things in motion so that things should function, said that we rely on a siman. Okay, so what's a chafisa? This is this little leather bag for wine. My dluskma on Purim. You see people coming around with their private stashes. They have this little metal thing that you put whiskey in. This little thing, like, okay. So
interesting. A lot of times people get those things like custom with their name on it.
Yeah.
So maybe they would do the same thing with this.
Right. My dluskma, what is the dluskma, which we also thought was some sort of satchel? Rabba Barshmal Talika Desabi. It's a basket for old people use to keep the things in it. I don't know why when I read this I thought it was the basket in front of the walker, but they have like a basket there, but I don't know what it is exactly. Anyway, they found documents in there, so we know who it goes to. Tachrich shel shtaris, agudah shel shtaris. This is a roll or a bundle of documents. It says also that by that you return it. Reza Yachzer. Okay, Taner Rabbanan Kamu Tachrich shel shtaris. How much is in a roll of documents? So Shleisha Kruchim Zebazeh. 3 documents that are rolled together, sandwiched together, right? Like kairach. It's rolled together. Kami agudah shel shtaris. How much is in a bundle of documents? Shleisha kshurim zebazeh. It's 3 that are tied together. The Gemara says, "Oh, tied. Shamet mina kasher siman." We have a question in other places. If we say that the way the knot is made, if that could be a sign, when you have something, can you ask the person, how was the knot made? And the person tells you the way the knot was made, and then you can return it. So, Here it seems that we have a proof that the not works. We have an answer. It says no. Atani Reb Chia, shleisha kruchin zeh b'zeh. It doesn't mean that it's tied, and the knot would be the siman. It means that there's three that are rolled together. 1 second. That's what you told me that tachrich was. Tachrich was three that were rolled together, and aguda was three that were tied. So the Gemara answers tachrich kol chad v'chad b'reisha dechavri. Aguda derami adad dikruches. That's the picture that you showed me over there. That the tachrich is when it's rolled. So it's rolled that the end of one is at the beginning of the next
so
one.
that's why they roll it. It's
rolled.
not easier to transport.
It's rolled differently. It's not that you stack them all together and then you roll it up like that.
Oh, so it's like a scroll, like a Megillah kind of.
That the bundle is when you stack it together. When it's rolled, it's lower down. So okay, I don't know why you would do it like that. It feels like it's not going to hold together. I mean, the first one when you're rolling it with nothing behind it, and then in the middle you add another one in. Okay, whatever the case is, that's the difference. My machers. So what do you announce when the person finds these documents? He says, "I found." What does he say? I found documents. So he says no. He announces that he found three documents, and now Minyan says he announces the amount, and now the people are going to come and say, was it rolled together or was it bundled together? That's what the people would come and tell him. If they can guess that, then it's going to be theirs, right? So my area tell us if you're announcing already the number. So why is this halacha only if there's three? Even if there's two documents together, it could also be bundled or rolled. Rather, we don't announce the number. Just like Ravina said that we announce the coin a little bit further on, but you don't announce how many. So over here, you say that I found documents. If you can tell me how many they were and how they were bundled, so that together that would be that would be the siman. Now, if there would only be two, what the Gemara is answering here is that if there would only be two documents, then if you say I found documents, so automatically the person knows that there's two. So this halacha would only apply if there's more than two, because then you didn't actually say that amount. In other words, the person needs to know the amount. He has to come up with the amount.
Someone to know the difference, they have to learn this. Or three or more is considered.
No. If someone says I found coins, so that would mean that he found two coins. So if you say how many were there, then he already told you that there's two. It could be two or more, right? But the minimal amount would be two. So that wouldn't be a siman when the person comes and says two, because you already know that it's two, possibly more, but we know that it's two. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's the same odds of guessing, because it could be two or more, right? That's what Hillel's asking.
Why can't you just ask what's in the document? The contents of the document. Wouldn't that be easier?
Yeah. Yeah. Someone says I found the book. You have to give me a book review.
Sometimes they roll up documents so people can't read them, like they put like a seal on it.
I think over here, Reb Daniel, I think it could be that everyone knows what's in the document. The borrower and the lender, they know what's in the document. The question is, when it fell, who was the last one to hold it? So if it fell and you have a bunch of documents together, the person can say, "Oh yeah, I was the one that dropped it. I had it together with my other documents." So then that would tell me that he was the one that dropped it, the last one to possess it.
The one that possessed it prior, wouldn't know if the other person lost it or not.
Right. Right. That's why we trust someone that comes along and says simon. That's together with that, but he should also tell us, otherwise maybe it's just taking his chances, right? Okay. Shimon ben Gamliel says that you can sort of tell whose documents these are, because if they all have the same borrower from different lenders, as is the custom of borrowers to borrow from more than one person. So then you know whose it is. And the same thing would apply if you have one person that lent to the different people. So you know whose it is. If you would think that it belongs to the lenders, my boy Gabi Adadi, then why are they all in the same all together? The Gemara says, well, that's not a real proof, because maybe all three or all the people were headed to the court to get it ratified, get it notarized, and it fell over there. They all dropped the documents. Gemara says, Dilma miyada it says no, because it was already ratified. We already have it. We know that it's notarized. Dilma, the Gemara says, Dilma miyada safar nafel. Maybe the scribe was the one that dropped it. And why are we giving it back to the borrower? These were the lenders that had given the documents to the scribe. They're getting together and they wanted to validate the documents so that they should be able to collect with it. It says, you don't leave it there. You wait over there to take it and you take it home. You don't leave it by the scribe once it's
Why
ratified.
did they have a scribe? Were they able to read and write back then?
I think in the Jewish world they could read, but not necessarily write.
Was it had to do with having like a witness?
Yeah.
In Shulchan Aruch, there's a discussion about people who are paid custodians of documents. Like, the business, they run a business of safe deposit box, but then their house burns or there's a flood.
Right.
Problems.
Right. The shalish, it's called.
Right.
Shalish. And you want documents that were partially paid become very confusing. Like who's gonna hold that? If someone has a promissory note and the borrower paid half, so you don't want him to hold it. He's gonna collect you don't want the lender to hold it. He's gonna collect the whole thing. You don't want the borrower to hold it. So they would put it by another person. Hopefully he remembers what the details are. Okay, so Shleisha Shalavam Yach, the same Gemara is going to repeat itself, but now it's talking about three people that borrowed from one malva, from one lender, three different people. So obviously these documents you return to the lender. Because if it belongs to the borrower, my boy Gabi Adadi, then why are they all together? Just the three different borrowers. How did they end up together? Maybe they went to get the documents written. No, the Gemara says no, because they're written in three different handwritings. So it says maybe they're getting to get it validated. It says malva makayim stara, leva makayim stara. That's something that the malva does, not the leva. So if they're going to get it ratified, then we would assume that it's the lender that's doing that, because the lender needs to validate it to collect. The borrower, he doesn't mind if people think it's a forgery. Okay, then he doesn't owe the money. Okay. The Mishnah said that if you find a simpain, which simpain meant a receipt, then you follow what's in the receipt. It seemed like even if it was in the hands of the malva, who would hold the receipt? The borrower would hold the receipt, right? The borrower would the receipt that he paid. But it seems like if you find even if it's in the other person's hands, you follow that. You follow what's in the receipt. Yeah, I don't know what the word means. Simpan.
Sounds,
Unissued receipts. How do they know it's unissued? Now, why would we follow what if it's unissued?
simple that is found in the possession of the
Yeah.
creditor.
Where does it say that? I don't see. I don't see the way they're explaining the word.
No, they don't explain the Hebrew words on
If they're unissued receipt, okay, yeah. I'm not sure why they're adding in the word unissued receipts. Okay, but that's not telling me the word. The word is the sympine is the bronchi tubes in the lung is called the sympine. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly. Anyway. Some Rabbi Yirmiyah Barabba Amarav. Rabbi Yirmiyah Barabba says the name of Rav. Let's say there is this receipt in the hands of the lender. Even if he's the one that wrote it, that's only because he's making a joke. No, I don't think it means a joke. It means that he didn't really use it. Now, the Gemara is going to explain what Rabbi Yirmiyah said in the name of Rav. This is exactly the opposite of our Mishnah, so which is going to be problematic. But you see, the lender wants the receipt so that he can, when the person's going to come to pay him back, he can get the money right away, and he doesn't have to say, oh, I don't have a receipt yet. Maybe hold the money till I get a receipt. He wants to get the money and run. So he may have a receipt ready. So if he doesn't know how to write, he had to go to a cipher to write a receipt. So he would go to the cipher first to have it ready so that when the person comes to pay him, he would have it immediate and be able to give it to him. But but even if it's in his own handwriting, it's still possible. Now why should he have it pre-written if he knows how to write? Maybe it's going to come right before nightfall on Friday afternoon. I'm not going to have time to dip my ink and dip my quill into the thing. I'm going to have it ready. I'll have it immediately ready. I could be able to give it to him. Okay. Now the problem is, Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah, Mishnah says the opposite. Mishnah says that if you find a receipt, we follow the receipt. And here you're telling me that no, maybe he had the receipt written, and it wasn't really used. My answer is Kedama Rav Safra, like Rav Safra said, Shnimtza bench the race of Karuin. Okay, Rashi gives two interpretations here. One of them is that the receipt was not something that he was going to hold on to. He was going to give it to the other person. So he has two piles on his desk. He has his things that he holds on to. Then he has his torn documents, things that he doesn't need or that he's giving away. So because it was found in the pile of documents that he needs to give to the other person, so we understand that it wasn't something that he was holding on to. It was meant to be given to the lender. And that's why... was it
that maybe the borrower came to pay him and he didn't have the receipt, so he got the receipt made?
Right, that's what we're thinking.
Maybe he already collected the money.
Right. Why does he have the receipt at all? So that we understood that the borrower came to pay him and he didn't have a receipt ready. So obviously the borrower has to trust the lender a little bit because he just lent the money, and this, so he pays him back, and the guy says, "I'll give you a receipt tomorrow." I mean, he lent the money, so you should trust him that he's going to give him the receipt. Turns out that the receipt doesn't come to him, and we find the receipt somewhere on the floor. We find it there. So if that's the case, so now what do we do with the receipt? So we said we return the receipt to the borrower that it's paid. But Rav Yirmiyah Marab says that we don't return it. It says, okay, that's when we don't find it in the right pile. But here we found it in the pile, which is the ones that were going out, which were meant to be given to either being thrown out or given to someone else.
In the case that didn't have the receipt available, maybe he paid him in front of witness. Because if the loan was given in front of witnesses, then it has to be paid back.
It has to be paid back with witnesses, right?
There was a witness.
Well, the receipt has witnesses on it, probably, unless it's in his own handwriting and it doesn't need witnesses, right? Okay, how do they interpret that? Shenimtza ben Shteres of Kurum, that it was found in amongst the torn documents. What do they say? How do they explain? And therefore what? Indicated that it had been discarded and the debt had been paid. Okay, that's Rashi's first shot, I think. Had the debt remained unpaid, the lender would not have placed the receipt together with his discarded documents, but have kept it ready for the borrower among his current documents. Its presence among the discarded documents, this is they're saying Rashi's second shot, indicates the note was paid and the borrower forgot to take the receipt. The lender, having no further need for the receipt, discarded it among his other useless documents. Okay, what's Rashi's first shot? Say.
All right, these pre-written receipts, there's no issue with the date. How would the lender, if the lender wants to have the receipt ready, whenever the borrower comes to pay him, he can't put a date on there because he doesn't know when.
Right. Maybe there is no date on it. I don't know. Okay.
But then that could become an issue with the whole thing with the properties.
No, because it's paid back. Doesn't matter. No one can collect. You can't collect from it.
Let's say that he passes. What in they find this receipt among his.
So no one can collect them. Because once there's a receipt, it doesn't matter when it was.
Does it matter if it was paid or not?
No, receipt means that it was paid.
But maybe he pre-wrote it. He doesn't know how to write, and then the borrower never paid it. Passes, and then they have this receipt.
Oh, so whichever hands it's in, it depends which pile it would be in. Yeah. Okay, so Tashima, come and listen. Yosef ben Shimon Perua. He finds amongst his documents that the document of Yosef ben Shimon was paid. Now, here we're talking about that there were two people, Yosef ben Shimon, in the city. And this person happened to have two documents from Yosef ben Shimon that he lent Yosef ben Shimon money. And then he has a document that says that Yosef ben Shimon was paid. So each one's going to claim, of course, that it was me that paid it, right? So what's going to be the halacha? Shtarish name prum. They're both paid. They're both considered paid because they can't collect from either one. Either one has a good claim. Rashi asks that you can't write even a document without adding a grandparent there, because if there's two people with the same name in the city, then you have to go back another generation to make sure that you know who it is. You have to do Yosef ben Shimon ben Yaakov or something. You have to go back and Yosef ben Shimon ben Yitzchak. That way you can already start to differentiate between them. So what's going on over here? He says is that in the two documents, the two promissory notes written correctly, that each of them had 3 generations in them. But the only problem is that the shaver, the receipt, only had 2 generations. So that was the confusing part, and so therefore it's considered paid. Now, the problem with this is that Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, in the name of Rav, says that you don't follow what it says in the receipt. It says, well, we can answer this easy. Just like Rav Safra said that it was in the right pile. Because it was in the right pile, so then we follow what it's in the receipt. That's how we explain the Mishnah. Tashima.
Wait, the receipt. Oh, sorry. The receipt doesn't have to have the amount.
Could be
the same amount.
Okay. I'm not sure if the receipt says the amount, but it could be it was the same amount. But it could be it's just from the text. It says that this document was paid.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, I'm not sure what just happened, but okay. That could be my phone turned off for a second. So now we're up to Shua Shlei Pakadnu Abba Shlei Amar Lanu Abba Shlei Matzana Ben Shtaresav Shalaba Shtar Zeprua. Here we're talking about orphans of a lender that are coming to orphans of a borrower that are saying that our father lent your father money, and we don't think that it was paid back because our father never told us that it was paid back, and we don't find any documents saying that it was paid back. So we think that that you owe the money. In other words, we have this document. We must have a document. We never found the receipt for it, but it sounds like if there would be a receipt there, then we would rely on it. It's a question on Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba Amarav that says that you don't rely on receipts that are there. Maybe he had it written and they never used it. What they mean to say is they didn't find the receipt in the right pile. Not that automatically if there would be a receipt it would be acceptable. If you find a receipt that has witnesses on it, you have to validate the witnesses. What does that mean? If it's validated, then we're going to trust it. Now, what's the question? The question is that if it's until it's validated, we don't trust it. That would be a kasha on the Mishnah. Or after it's validated, we do trust it. That would be a kasha on Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba Amarav. The Gemara says, "Ema yiskayim mechei samav." That's not what it means. It means not that you validate it by the signatures and then it's going to be good, and beforehand it's not good. Rather, what it means is that you take the signatures, you read the names in it, and you go over to those witnesses and you ask them, you use the signatures to find out who knows about this, and then you would go ask those witnesses that signed it to tell me if it was paid or not. Because they would tell me, those witnesses would say, if they signed on it because the guy needed it beforehand, or they signed on it because he was actually paid. You know, what was the reason why they signed? Was it just so he should have it ready, or what did they sign because it was actually paid? Tashemach, so come and listen. Simpan sheyesh lav kosher. A receipt that has on it witnesses is valid. My edim, What does it mean, Edim? It means Edikiyam. It means that it was validated. This is logical. If you say that there's no Edim at all, no witnesses, the puzzle, of course it's puzzle. It must mean that it was validated. Now, they would only validate it if they know that it was actually paid. Yeah. Reb Naftali, I think you asked that once. If they could validate a document just on the signatures, or did they validate the document? I think witnesses could sign a document even though it didn't take place. But if it would go to court, that would only be if they knew that it took place. That's what it's saying over here.
So it's saying they're not necessarily saying the transaction occurred. They're saying the debtor agreed that he owed.
Yeah, and over here we're saying that they're having a document ready for when the payment is done, even though it hasn't been repaid.
That means witnesses can be signing on a document that doesn't have the right date. Right? Isn't the document supposed to be complete before witnesses sign it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
This would be on the receipt. Now, on a receipt, not necessarily is there a date, but on the promissory note, you need to have a date. Because the promissory note is going to affect other things. It's going to affect liens on the property. The receipt doesn't affect that, right? Okay, Gufa.
How would the second lender prove that the first one lender was paid off to get the order done?
Well, whatever, it doesn't matter, because whatever the receipt is, the receipt says that it's been paid. So whether it's paid in January or in February, you can't collect from this debt again, right? I mean, if you lose the receipt, that's a different story. But if you have the receipt, that basically means that there's no more collection. Gufa, simpin sheish lavedim iskayim b'chaysamav. You validated. Ain't no lavedim. If there's no witnesses on it, the yoytze mitachas yidei shlish. We explained this, talking about that it was ratified. But if it's not in the hands of the borrower, but it's in the hands of a third person, or let's say it's a receipt that's written after the signatures of the promissory note. It says underneath the signatures, it says this document has been paid. Kosher. That's all of that is kosher. Why is that good? Because the lender trusted not the borrower, he trusted this third person to hold it for him. It's probably partially paid or something. If it wasn't paid, he never would have allowed that someone should write, the lender would never allow that someone should write on his document that it was paid. Obviously, it was paid. Okay, this is an introduction to Metzia.
So all of
I have another
this
9
was
chapters.
like more like Baba Kama.
No, the rest of Metzia is similar. You know, there's some interest laws also, and deposits and things that people are holding for other people, and responsibility like that. Okay, the next chapter is this famous chapter. It's the first chapter that students learn in school when they start Gemara. They start with this. It's called Eila Metzias. It would be like a 5th grade class, the introduction to Gemara. Eila Metzia Shalai. Which found objects can the person keep? In which found objects does he have to announce that he found? The following are the ones that he can keep. Yeah, they teach this to students because they want people, young children, to know that just because you find something doesn't mean that it's yours. Everything requires effort, and there's no such thing as just like finding treasures and getting rich and getting everything. Just collecting for yourself. Okay. Matzah pears mefuzar, and if he finds fruits that are spread out, he can keep it. Fruits, it doesn't have to mean fruits; it could mean produce. Produce means grain. That type of stuff. Mais mefuzar, so coins that are spread out. Yeah. Now it's interesting. It doesn't say the Rosh Hashanah yet. The only one that it says Rosh Hashanah is the next one. It says kriches Rosh Hashanah, bundles that are in the public property. The reason for that is because those bundles are going to be either kicked around or stepped on, and then you're going to lose the sign that was on the knot. Right? It depends how you learn this. If the knot's the simon.
Like, take for instance, like Beismanah,
No, that would be considered Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah over here doesn't mean public. Well, Rosh Hashanah over there, Rosh Hashanah may mean that it doesn't have to do with Shabbos. It has to do with people walking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, people. It has to do with traffic. Igule devela. These are fig cakes, just to dry the figs into like round circles. Kikar shel nachtem, bread that comes from a baker, as opposed to bread from a homeowner. Then they would know that whose it was, especially because they probably use the oven of the bakery, so they would make it a special design. But right, so that you should be able to recognize your bread. But this was the bread from the baker, so it was all the loaves looked the same. Machrezes shel dagim, strings of fish. This is also done in a like sardines. Like they all look the same. They all exactly the same hung. This over here it's hung. Over there now we can it. Chaticha shel basar, slices of meat, which also would be all the same type of slices. Gizi tzemer l'kuchim medinasan. This is shearings of wool that are, it says, taken from their country, but what it means is that it was not processed anymore after it's just like tufts of the wool that was just removed from the sheep. Anitze pishtan are stalks of flax. L'sheni shalagaman, and tongues of wool. This is just combed wool, and it's already been dyed. But apparently that was very common, so people had this. Whoever finds it can keep it. Reb Meir. Rabbi Yehuda adds in a point. He says, "Kol sheyesh bo shinoi chayav lahachriz." Anything that's a little abnormal, you have to announce it. Ketzad, for example, matzah igol b'teich cheres. If you find one of those fig cakes, but there was a little piece of clay, a shard in it. Kikar b'teich mas. There was a loaf of bread, and inside was the money. Yeah, remember that there was this book. Samurai of Vishigrad. Ever see that book? It's this very funny writer. It was written in Yiddish, but it's translated into English. And in there, he's describing how tired the bakers were in Warsaw. And someone came in to the bakery complaining that they found the head filling inside their bread, because apparently the baker had fallen. They didn't give them any time. They gave them like 2 hours of sleep, and they had fallen asleep over the dough. They had big things of dough, and it fell off and it fell in, and it got. Anyway, so the baker says it couldn't have been one of my workers because I let them sleep for 4 hours. It couldn't have been him. That was just proof that it wasn't Samurai of Vishigrad. Yeah, it's a very good book. It's hilarious.
So in all these cases, he can keep it because is there an assumption that the owner is Yush or an assumption that nobody could give a good simon on it?
Those two points go together.
Okay.
Because there's no simon, so then there's Yush. Person says, I'll never be able to get it back. Everyone has the same thing. I'll never be able to prove it. Yeah. This is I lost it. Yeah.
Could it be since it looks like these things are mass produced?
Yeah, it's not. Back then they didn't have mass production, but they had. But if everyone had the same thing, so yeah. So okay, Rav Shimon ben Elazar Eimer Kol Kli Ampuria Ein Chayv Lahachris. Kol Kli Ampuria, the Gemara is going to explain, is something that's new, that the person doesn't have a siman in it yet, something that's brand new. How's he going to be able to prove that it's his? Brand new sefer, right? How do you know it's yours? There's no name in it, and it's brand new. Just because you have it, so other people have it also. And if it's worn, you can say, "Oh yeah, I had it. It was bent on this page." The Gemara is going to analyze the Mishnah. It says if you find produce that's spread out, vikama. What do you mean spread out? How big spread out? How much produce spread out? Like, what do you mean? Every one piece is also spread out. Well, you find an apple. Is that what is that? Is that spread out, or now that there's two, it's spread out? It says Amar Rabbi Yitzchak kav barbamas. We're talking about that it was spread out one kav, which is about the size of 24 eggs, in 4 cubits, like 6 by 6 feet. 24 eggs in 6 feet. That's considered spread out. It's not eggs. We're talking about grain, but that would be that size. Hey chidami, what's the case? If it fell afilu tuvanami, then even if it would be more grain, more produce, but it fell, the person dropped it. He's not coming back for it. He lost it. Doesn't have a siman. How's he going to prove this piece of grain is his? And if it was placed there, then why does it have to be a whole kav? Even if it was half a kav, a quarter of a kav, but he placed it down. You see that it was piled up neatly. So then, so what's the case? How is it positioned on the ground? Talking about not that it fell out of his trunk when he was pulling off. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about that he left it on the floor instead of sweeping it up and collecting it into a bin. After they thresh the grain, so they collect it. Now, what you leave on the bottom, that's considered like I'm leaving it there. But after you scoop up the main stuff, the rest, so you basically, it's not a lost item, it's a hefker item. He made it ownerless and now he explains. If it's a kav in 4 amas, that's a big job to collect all of that. The person's not going to bother to come back and collect it. So he was mafkared. But if it's less than that, he's going to come back and get it. Would mean that if it's in less area than 4 amas, then it would be easier to collect. So then he would come back for it. Okay. Rabbi Yirmiyah is going to analyze what's the main point of this kav bar ba'amas. Is the main point the value, that it's only a kav, not more, and so therefore he's not going to come and back and get it? Or is the main point the bother, that it's 4 amas? What's the main point, the value or the bother? So he asks it in a way of question. He says, let's say you have chatzi kav b'shtei amas ma. Let's say you have a half a kav and 2 amas. Follow the question? Half a kav and 2 amas. Half the value, but half the effort. Kav bar ba'amas time amai. If it's a kav and 4 amas, what's the reason? Mishum de nafesh terchayo, because it's a big bother. You have to crawl on the floor and collect it from 6 feet. Chatzi kav b'shtei amas, but here it's only 2 amas. Given le nafesh terchayo le mafkula, maybe he'll come back for it. Oidel more, maybe mishum de chashivi, because it's not so significant. It's only a kav. So v'chatzi kav b'shtei amas given le chashivi mafkula. But a half a kav is for sure less significant. So for sure he's not coming back for that. Is it the bother, which is, and therefore it's less, so he would come back for it? Or is it the value of it, which is now is less, so he's for sure not coming back for it? Taisus has a great question. He says every case of a kav and 4 amas is always a half a kav and 2 amas. So how could the Rabbi Yirmiyah even ask this question? Because that's every case of a kav and 4 amas. Anyway, his answer is very interesting, is that it's not true, because half a kav and 2 amas is 2 amas by 4 amas or 2 amas by 2 amas? No, because half the area, if it's 4 by 4, so half of it is 2 by 4, not 2 by 2. So Taisvus is explaining that it switches in here. It's not going a 2. It's not going a 4 by 2. It's going a 2 by 2, 2 by 2. So it's half. It's much even less. That's his question. Is he explaining Taisvus there? Yeah, that's a 2 by 4. And that's 4. Oh, that's the next one. Okay, that's the next question. Kabayim b'shmein amas. Let's go the other way. Rabbi Yirmi goes the other way now. There's 2 kav and 8 amas. You see, now we're taking it the other direction. Mahu, what would be the din there? Kav bar amas time ma'imshum denafis terchaya. What's the reason why a kav and 4 amas? We said that he's going to be mafkared. He's going to just leave it there because that's a big bother to crawl around on the floor to collect 6 amas worth of stuff. The kolshkin kabayim b'shmein amas. For sure, if it's an 8 amas, 8 amas is going to be what is that? 12 feet probably. Given the nafresh terchayo tvei mafkelo. This is a really big bother. For sure, he's going to leave it. Or maybe because it wasn't significant, because it's only a kav. But kabayim, this is not 24 eggs. This is 48 eggs. So he won't be mafkeret. What's the main point of it here? Is it the effort or is it the value? Kav shumshimin bar ba'amas. Let's say it's a kav of sesame seeds, 4 amas. Mahu. So the kids love this Gemara because they hear Sesame Street. That's what they remember. So if it's a sesame seeds in 4 amas, so it happens to be shumshimin are expensive, but they're very hard to pick up. So kav bar ba'amas time ma'imshum b'lei chashivi. What's the reason why we said that he's going to leave it there? Because it was a kav. It was grain in 4 amas. It wasn't significant. Shumshimin kim the chashivi le'mafkio, but shumshimin sesame seeds are very expensive, so he's not gonna leave them. Maybe they had those sesame candies back then. Dilma, no hummus. No, hummus is trina. It was chalva, right? Dilma mishum the nafresh terchayo. Maybe now it's even a bigger bother. Kolskin shumshim kim nashchai tvei maflu. It's for sure gonna leave it, right? Even though it's the same size, same measurement, but he's for sure gonna leave it because it's harder to pick up. Kavtamri barbamas. Let's say it's dates in 4 amas. Kavri mini barbamas. This should be easier to pick up. Mao kav barbamas time ma'imshum b'lei chashivi. We thought that a kav was insignificant. That's why he's going to leave it there. But kavtamri barbamas, kavri mini barbamas. Nami kiven lei chashiv mafkilo. This is also not so significant. It's only a kav. Dilma mishum the nafresh terchayo. Over there it was grain. It's hard to pick up. Kavtamri barbamas, kavri mini barbamas, kiven lei nafresh terchayo lei mafkilo. But over here, it's easy to pick up, because they're much bigger than grain. So what's going to be the din? So take it. We leave this as a question.
Whoa. So it's not very clear cut.
Of the year Shlomi Das.
Would it also depend, like, person? It's like, for example, the farmer that picks up the thing that he leaves some behind, people will come and pick up what he left behind.
Yeah, we're asking like, what's the average person? You're talking about like the poor people will come.
Or just.
That's exactly the point. The farmer leaves it behind, and the Gemara is saying at how much that leaving behind is considered that he would made it hefker, that anyone that wants can take it, or maybe the farmer is coming back for it. So that's what he's asking. I mean, we say kav and arbamas, which is like measuring value, ratio of value per effort per value. Okay.